You're watching at France 24. Hello and welcome to the business interview with me, Marcus Carlson. Today, I'm sitting down with the Chief Executive of Pernod Ricard. His name is Pierre Pringuet, and I've got the pleasure of welcoming him here in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, you're the head of a company that is the world's second largest spirits maker, Pernod Ricard. Once again, you have brands such as Chivas Regal and Absolut, as well as Kahlúa. How are you looking at your business at the moment? How is your company doing?
Well, for the time being, very good. And I can say that the start of the year is very much in continuation with the last fiscal, which, as you know, has been very good.
But what about all of the market turmoil that we've been seeing and the fears that the global economy is heading towards a slowdown? How is that impacting your business?
Well, first of all, the situation which is contemplated by, let's say, the IMF in the recent reforecast is that to have a sort of modest growth in the Western world, but still quite a dynamic economy in the emerging market. And it's very much in line with what we enjoyed last year. Last year, our sales grew by 1.5% in those mature markets and 17% in the emerging markets. So I think that's very much the sort of picture we could see for the current year.
But if we have a scenario where Greece, for instance, enters into a default here in Europe, wouldn't that be bad news for your business?
I think it would be bad news for everybody, and I hope that the political leaders will take whatever measures in order to avoid this.
Now, your sales last year, in the last fiscal year, organically grew more than your main competitors, Diageo of the UK. How do you explain that? What's the recipe for success when it comes to those organic sales figures?
Well, I think that we take the benefit of a worldwide presence. And you know, one of the key pillars of our strategy is to sell our own brand with our own people, which means our own affiliates. And already we have affiliates in more than 70 different countries, which means that we benefited from the growth in Asia, in Eastern Europe, particularly in Russia, but also new countries like Poland, for instance, and not to forget about Latin America.
So it's your global scope that is helping you out in these times of uncertainty?
Oh, definitely. And we're also a very wide portfolio. You mentioned some of the brands. I should add, for instance, the Irish whiskey, Jameson, which is absolutely booming. And despite the slowdown in the economy, in the US economy, the brand has been growing steadily year on year by more than 20%.
You said, though, that you're seeing most of your growth in emerging markets. There are signs that perhaps even the mighty Chinese economy is heading towards a slowdown. We are seeing signs of that, at least. What were to happen with your business if, indeed, China slows down?
Well, if you take as an example what happened in the year 2008-09, which has been the worst of the crisis, I mean, we grew by almost 10% in China. So we're still talking of a very dynamic economy, and for our sales, very good growth. By the way, I should point out that we sell in those countries extremely profitable product, in particularly the Cognac Martel or the Chivas 12-year-old and 18-year-old, which means that these countries are very high margin. It's the second largest country for Pernod Ricard.
So no matter what happens, Pernod Ricard is still going to be strong in China. Is that your message?
Yes, we are definitely the leader, and we are strengthening our position year on year.
Let's talk a little bit about emerging markets. You say that that is where you're seeing most of your growth, but in what countries? Is it China purely, or are you looking at other emerging nations as well? It's fairly easy to say, yeah, emerging economies, but what does that mean for you specifically?
Well, let's take some example. I think we mentioned China, but of course immediately Vietnam comes as another growth country, or not to forget about Taiwan, and obviously the other giant, which is India. And in India, our business has been steadily growing with 25–30% year on year. But moving maybe from that part of the world, the Latin American countries are doing extremely well. Brazil is definitely a new giant economy where we are developing, I mean, for international brand in the range of 30–40% year on year.
Now, you've grown throughout takeovers. I suppose that's fair to say in the past decade or so. Is that development going to continue? Are you going to continue growing even more by taking over more and more companies?
Well, first of all, we always managed to have both organic growth and external growth through acquisitions. And you're right, over the last decade, we made cumulative 20 billion euros in terms of M&A, with the acquisition of Chivas, of Valentine's, and Absolute, of course. Having said that, today the priority is clearly on organic growth. Last year we had 7%. We will look at what the perspective for this year is, but I think we will continue to grow our business, and we have one priority is to continue to deleverage the company.
You say that's the priority. Are you eyeing some companies though, and some brands around the world at this stage?
No, today the priority is organic growth, not M&A.
So you're not looking at anything at the moment?
We're not looking at anything at the moment.
All right. Now, you have more than 9 billion euros worth of net debt. I suppose that's a problem for you as well, isn't it, at this stage? How are we going to pay it down?
Well, we do pay it down, and by the way, it's reflected in the upgrade, which have been given to us by Moody's, and Fitch also changed in a positive way the outlook for the company. But just keep in mind that already we have extremely favorable financial conditions. I mean, we issued over the last fiscal year 1 billion euro in bonds and $1 billion US, both oversubscribed many times, and with coupon, which I think many companies will dream to have.
So your priority at the moment, is it paying down debt or organic growth? How do you sort of explain your priorities, as I say?
Oh, the priority is definitely organic growth, to continue to grow the business as we did over the last couple of years, and by the cash flow which is generated by this activity, paying down the debt, and of course continue to deleverage the group.
Now, you managed in this past financial year, you managed to stabilize your sales here in Europe. The previous year, sales actually dropped in Europe by around about 5%. Are you confident that sales won't drop any further, and that you'll actually, as I say, that you have stabilized the situation at the moment, and that we won't see any more drops?
Well, first of all, where does the drop come from? In fact, basically from two countries, which we know are difficult. One is Greece. Fortunately, it's small, but it's a double-digit decline. And second, it's Spain. In Spain, that's more severe in the sense that Spain is the fourth largest spirit market in the world. But unfortunately, this market is continuing to decline. Elsewhere, in many other countries, and I should mention, for instance, Germany or France, we have been growing. Not to forget about, I mean, new countries like Turkey, which is absolutely booming. And I'm very pleased with the performance which we have, for instance, in Poland.
But it seems, though, as if you're facing a couple of headwinds. Here in France, for instance, the government wants to raise the tax on spirits. What do you say about that? Is that going to be a difficulty for you here in France?
Well, obviously, I would have preferred not to have duty increases, but you know what the government is doing, the reason to generate higher income. Since it will take place in January this year, for our fiscal year, it won't have any major impact, because very likely we'll have to anticipate some deliveries to the distributors, and of course with the compensation, the destocking in the second half of the year. The impact would be more for the next fiscal year. We need to look at the precise measure in order to assess more precisely what the impact.
That sort of brings us back a little bit to what we spoke about first of all in this interview, the Eurozone debt crisis and the fears of a global slowdown. How do you think the politicians have done throughout all of this? Have they managed to take care of the risks and really improve your market situation and the business confidence as a whole? What do you say about that?
Well, first of all, I think we are a global company, and through our global presence, I mean, we can really benefit from any potential growth, and I think that's what we're demonstrating over the last couple of years. And I think, you know, that's the strategy which has been to to have our own base in all major markets is really what gives us the strength to resist to whatever environment.
But if you were to give a grade, so to speak, to Eurozone politicians and how they've dealt with the Eurozone zone debt crisis and what kind of measures they're taking at the moment, what would that be?
Well, it's fair to say that it's probably more difficult to make decisions when you're 17 different countries. Having said that, I'm pretty sure that they will make the right decisions in the right moment.
All right. A confident Chief Executive of Pernod Ricard. Thanks very much indeed, Pierre Pringuet, for taking the time to speak to us.
Thank you.
And with that, we're going to wrap up the program, the business interview here on France 24. Thanks for watching.